I feel like I've gone to sleep at 39 and I've woken up and I'm now 53.
That's Ian Randall. I shall tell you more about him in a moment's time. Just let me make a sketchbook picture just to start the walk. I've got my X100V with me today. It's a bright sunny day today, 2000th as a shutter speed, f4.5, ISO 160, just a meandering path, there we go, behind me, just to set the scene to where I'm walking today. Now I need to level with you. This is the second time in a week I have recorded this show. The first was on my own, Monday, just gone, in a place called Shoreham, which is very close to our friends in Brighton at MPB. I'd been there making a couple of films, more news on that in the weeks to come. But today I'm with Barney, so I was on my own on Monday, today with Sir Barkalot. I made the show walking along the shingle beach, the stone and shingle beach at Shoreham, and it was so windy that frankly I sounded like I was shouting at you in a Force 9. I got home late Monday night and, quite pleased that I thought, I've got a show in the can already. And I took a listen back and my heart sank immediately because I got some cracking pictures from my walk in terms of interesting documentary ones, but the sound was terrible. And as much as I tried to convince myself that I had got it all in the can, by Tuesday morning I'd put the can in the recycling bin and decided I'd have to record all over again, which is the show you're now listening to. The other one, frankly, just sounds like I'm in some kind of wind tunnel. It's dreadful. And the reason I'm telling you all that is because I still want to show some of the pictures that I made in Shoreham as my photo walk sketchbook pictures, because there were some interesting scenes. There really were, such as the houseboats, which are unlike any houseboats that I've seen in the past. Come away from that, Barnes. Just seen a rabbit, but the rabbit's gone into brambles. Don't go in there, you'll hurt yourself. So yeah, they're, I think, quite interesting set of sketchbook images from a walk, but it just isn't this one. So I'm sort of mix-matching. Is that the right expression? Anyway, here goes, take two. I was talking to a wedding guest on Saturday just gone, the best man as it goes, and I was drawn to him by the fact he was sporting a 35mm film camera, the Canon AV1. Now, film cameras to me are like dogs, really, in that it's as easy to strike up a conversation with somebody who has a film camera as it is to somebody who's out walking their bundle of furry pride. Now, regular followers of the show will know I don't do a lot of tech. I tend to leave tech to people who just, do tech. And we talk or focus mainly on the why rather than the how, although we do a bit of both from time to time. But this camera the guest had, the AV1, is a very historically important camera for a few reasons. One of them being, or the main one being, that it introduced what was called the FD mount, which simplified lens attachment by replacing the older, really cumbersome mounting ring with a much, much easier system. So if you wanted to change lenses, it didn't become this kind of chore that it had been. Do you remember changing lenses where it was really strictly a two-hand job? You had to line up the lens, screw it on, drop it a couple of times for good measure, maybe cross-thread it on some camera brands. But on the FD system, you just lined up the red dots on the lens and the camera, then twisted the lens clockwise, and it clicked into place. Et voila! Our lives were changed forever. Anyway, we got to talking, this guest and I, and a friendship was made by my interest in his camera. And we started to talk about this podcast. Ever the one to court a chance to spread the word. We were talking about the sort of things that we do here on this podcast. You know, like taking the show out of the studio on a walk. Twice this week, as it goes. The fact that I read letters that are sent in. Twice this week, as it goes. Our monthly assignments. Mental health is often a theme of our conversation when it comes to creativity and well-being. And then there's the plethora of studio guests from all sorts of backgrounds, some famous, some not so famous. Fame is not the barometer by which I invite every guest onto this podcast. Yes, it's good to hear from and about some of our heroes, but life is it's more nuanced than that, isn't it? And it's a sports photographer I talked with today, who you may not have been aware of prior to today, but you'll know him certainly much better after today. He's somebody who found photography, or maybe actually photography found him, as you'll find out in the story today, as an unexpected twist of fate in a life that was derailed suddenly, without so much of a how'd you do, or certainly sans invitation, when a cancer diagnosis came to call. Now, I would imagine there is not one listener listening right now who has not been affected or touched by this conversation, either personally or through a family member who's fought it, maybe sadly lost their life to it, or indeed, as many, many more people do now, live with it day to day. In fact, the wedding I was at on Saturday, when I talked with this guest, I wasn't due to be photographing at all. In fact, I didn't have the job until only 2 weeks ago. I was at it because this dreadful disease had changed plans in an unexpected and sudden fashion. So there is a connection to this story that I wasn't initially planning at all, obviously. Ian Randall is an extraordinary inspiration. He's my guest today, and I know from our friendship on this show with Nils Armelinks, who lost his life to cancer earlier this year after defying all odds and medical expectations, that inspiration is a word that doesn't always sit comfortably with those who've gone through incredible lengths to punch as far as they can this disease squarely where it hurts most. But looking from the outside in, I am, if perhaps a little ill-advisedly, going to sit in a holding pattern with the I word, inspiration. I find him inspirational. I find the story inspirational. I find his honesty to be the same, and I find the context of photography within the story to be extraordinary, because this isn't only the story of someone, slight spoiler now, who found photography at a time of their life they were least expecting it, then made that the story of their life looking ahead. No, it's also the story of a photograph. One particular photograph.
Today on the Photo Walk.
My nurse specialist, who's a good friend of mine now, I said to her after the third cycle, I said to her, I'm really sorry, I can't do this. I remember very clearly sitting on the end of my bed, and I had a school photo of my two boys who were 5 and 7 at the time. And she said, I just remember laying on one side, just staring at that photo. Why me was a thing I said a million times when I was diagnosed, and I still say it today. When the players started using my pictures or contacted me to use the pictures, it was just a dream come true. You don't actually see the match.
No.
Everyone thinks you sit there and enjoy it, but there's so much you miss. You can't capture everything. I want to do it because I don't want to let anybody down. And I am unwell or not well enough probably to work a lot of the time, but I do it. My aim when I came out of treatment and the treatment was stopped because of various toxicity problems for the chemo, I wanted to get to 50 years old.
Ian Randall is my guest today. Welcome along as we make our photo walk together, a show where we walk and make pictures photographically, sketchbooking our time together each week. I'll take a peek into the mailbag in a moment for a flavour of today's letters into the show, but before that, thank you to our extra milers and mpb.com who sponsor this show and keep us here week on week. MPB is a website, mpb.com, where you can safely buy, sell and trade quality used photo and video gear online if you're in the US, the UK or Europe, and you become part of the circular economy. And it's a really easy service to use, which is why I use it and have used it for many, many years. You go online to mpb.com, you click the button at the top of the website that says Start Selling and Trading, and just follow the very easy instructions where you're prompted to enter the model name and click a box for the appropriate condition. From there, your kit's collected from your front door, and then MPB pays you for your camera gear within days. MPB's price commitment provides the right price up front, and they provide instant quotes that are guaranteed for 14 days, and they never add, say it together, hidden fees. So make more money by avoiding those horrible seller fees when you go to MPB with a price commitment that gives visual storytellers the right price up front for our kit. I'll have a link on the show page today, or simply remember 3 letters, MPB, then pop on the end.com. On the show today then, Rikki Bunder is sleeping in the outback, under the stars, with the critters and a camera. Casey Sisterson finds that bison are stubborn old so-and-sos when you want to make a picture. If you've ever fancied developing your own film but thought you'd need to know more about magic and potions and Severus Snape, some good news perhaps from Gert Jan Cole, although he's also chasing wolves through the Netherlands. And we start a new feature as we embrace the amazing poetry you send in from time to time, but this time in its own rightful new place within the show. And talking of new, I have some show news that is new. It's show news that, well, the feature starts at the end of June. I'll tell you more about it right at the tail end of the show, just after the play-out song. Right, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. SD cards or a spare roll of film, check. Wolf and critter repellent, check. Let's walk. It's a much sunnier day than it was the other day in Shoreham. Puppy, where are you going? I'm going this way. See you later. You know, that's... See you later is a word that works really well. Or phrase, words that work really well. Come here, not so good. See you later. Are you going somewhere? But I do love this time of year because you get dapples of light, particularly in woodland. And walking in woodland, as the song went... or didn't go today. There we go, some silver birch here. See, what I love is how the sun just tickles the silver birch and you get this sort of the silhouettes of trees around you, in front of you, layered before you. And then you get this lovely, stark, bright white silver birch to photograph. Fantastic. It's made another sketchbook image there. So welcome to the Photo Walk, a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or 3 to remind us of where those footprints were left. And you are a part of this with your pictures, your letters, your postcards, your thoughts. And we'll start with Rikki Bunder, who has a powerful picture to go with this letter on the show page today. This one is from Australia land. Hi, Neil. Immediately, by the way, I'm having to hide behind the sofa of courteous flattery that I drag behind me. Thank you, says Rikki, for an amazing podcast. You really are an incredible storyteller. Your episodes are inspirational, there's the I word, emotional, and at times hilarious. Only times. Anyway, you can get out from behind that couch, says Rikki. I'm working on a project that I thought you might be interested in. I was a commercial advertising photographer for many years, and after too many 60-plus hours working weeks, I thought I would make the move into education, which in theory would give me more time to work on my own personal projects. You see, Rikki, this is sounding like your sentence is heading in the stuff that didn't quite work out the way I thought it might direction. Fast forward, says Rikki, 12 years, and besides the occasional short escape, work and life have seemed to continuously found a way to put these personal photographic projects on hold. Well, as Christmas just gone, I put an end to the procrastination. I've also been fascinated with minimal open landscapes. Nothing but the horizon, a line that separates the earth and the sky. So, with this fascination in mind, I set out for a week-long road trip, 3,000 kilometres plus. That is a road trip. To 4 different salt lakes in Australia. Just me, a swag, a camera, tripod, 50 litres of water, and a litre of sunscreen. Blimey, I set out making sure that the experience, not the captures, was the most important consideration. Just pausing for a second, Rikki. I had no idea what a swag was. In this country, you see, in the shires of England land, swag is stolen goods. Sort of goes back to the 18th century. Highwaymen and stuff like that, or people in stripy tops with a swag bag, that sort of thing, cartoon sort of swag bag. But in the land of 1,000 things that can bite, sting, or crawl into your mouth while you sleep under the stars, in Australia, you are so brazenly at one with nature, Rikki, that for you, I read, a swag is, well, it's essentially a portable sleeping unit. The experience, says Rikki, was spectacular. Most places had no mobile reception, and I only talked to a couple of people in 7 days. See, now, even though I think I might come out in a slight rash, Rikki, at the thought of being totally off-grid, I do think that sounds like a tonic. I do. A modern-day tonic. The locations were very remote, and being out on the sort was a very surreal experience. Sometimes, with no landscape references at all, it became hard to focus, hard to judge distances. But the silence, beautiful. At the 45 degrees Celsius temperature, it was at times a bit of an out-of-body experience. So, to the photography, says Rikki. Well, inspired by the colour-filled painting of the 50s to 70s, I'm attempting to investigate what happens when you remove any form of subject or focal point from an image. This turns out to be, it's impossible, but the intent has produced some interesting results. On the salts, where half the landscape is white and the other half is sky, light changes dramatically by the second. I've included a picture with this letter, which was shot about 30 minutes after sunset. You can see more images via my Instagram and website, which I will link to on the show page today, Rikki. Anyway, thank you for your amazing storytelling and dedication to celebrating this wonderful medium from Rikki Bunder. Rikki, thank you for your letter. And there's something, well, absolutely sublime and surreal in one when it comes to your pictures of these wide open spaces. Take a moment not just to go and see this work, but visit Rikki's other galleries as well, because your website is like it's like meditation. Honestly, it is. Especially the work called Slippage. I'll say no more, save to invite you to spend a long linger there. It's just beautiful work. It really is, all of it. Now, when I was making the first recording of this, we'll call it the rehearsal recording, I tried to do something, I'm going to say in a similar vein to Rikki, but it wasn't. I photographed, it was really misty when I first arrived in Brighton, and I photographed the horizon sort of melting into, well, above it the sky and below it the sea. And I was trying to, well, with inspiration from Rikki, recreate that sort of feeling that he was looking for. I'll put it on the show page. You can be the judge. And on the question of the swag, because Rikki, I was worried for your safety, I typed in, is it safe to sleep in a swag in the outback? And I got back, the outback is actually the best place to indulge in a bit of outdoor sleeping because the dry air means there are no mosquitoes. Plus, very few animals trundle through the barren landscape after dark. In fact, sleeping in a swag beneath the stars can be an amazing first-time camping experience. So there we go, it is safe. And unlike, it seems, the countryside more available to me, where you can wake up with a hill-walking sheep dribbling into your open mouth as you drift off to some kind of broken sleep. Not a nice picture to imagine, I know. We have a newsletter for the show that now goes out each week. It gives you notice of all new and extra editions, so you never miss a show. There's some photo assignments, some requests for contributions to join in with special features, and something that I've spied that I think you may enjoy in photography and walking land. Well, I try to do one of those a week anyway. And it's also a very good way of trying to build our community, because there's an opportunity to forward the letter to a friend who you think might just like to walk with us. We're okay, us lot, aren't we? Yes. Do you remember last week while walking on the beach on Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, in America land, listening to the show, Arno Dimling had suggested stopping all at the same time and making a photograph, a kind of synchro snap, if you will. Not that way, pups, that's the road. This way, come on. Very much a working title, synchro snap. Not sure I'm very into that one, but at least it alliterates. It'll do for the moment. A feature that we used to do, actually, before Arno started listening to the show, by the sound of it. So that would have been a good few moons ago we were doing this. The idea, in case you didn't hear Arno's letter, was that we get an idea of what was straight in front of you as you listen to the show by making a picture all at the same time. Me and you, as we walk, with whatever camera you like. And the pictures we got back, what I saw, where the show was being listened to, was certainly not all walking. Not at all. There was a decent selection from railway journeys, including the New York and Paris metros, a few from the cabs of trucks and cars. I was a bit concerned by the bedroom ones. Part your grubby thoughts for a moment. It was only that the suggestion was the cast was being used as an aide de sommeil, as they may say in France, an aid to sleep. And of course we had some from your trails. We did have some from trails. All taken at the moment I said 3, 2, 1, click, make a picture. So we're going to do that again, but before I do, Casey Sisterson was first to come back with a picture he made last week as I asked you to make this picture on the show. Neil, you'd asked in episode 432 what I was looking at while listening to the podcast, says Casey. I typically listen Saturday mornings while on my way to a small photo adventure, a micro adventure, if you will. I was heading to some marshes about an hour from my home to photograph the latest birds to have migrated back to Manitoba, Canada, and this route has me passing by a couple of bison farms. When they're out and about, I always stop to photograph these majestic beasts. Serendipitously, I was stopped along this old country back road waiting for the right moment to take a photograph when you actually did call out to take a photograph. The bison were nosing about in the freshly greening grass for a bit of a meal with its winter's coat slowly being shed. I'd been waiting for him or her to raise their head, but they were too enamoured with their grazing. But as per suggestion, when you said 3, 2, 1, make a picture, I took a photograph. He, she, never did raise their head before I continued on to my destination. I do find that my journeys, though, produce as much enjoyment and photos as do my destinations. I know. I don't suppose it was a happy ending, really. But yeah, I know. Don't tell Case. It's not Casey's fault. The episode was, as always, an enjoyable one. So thank you, Casey. This picture is on the show page today, and it is fun, yes, to see what the rest of the world is seeing as I make my own sketchbook photos and walk the photo walk. So we'll make another picture now, shall we? Let's do this, as they say. I've stopped. Raise your camera or your smartphone. I am looking down a path straight ahead of me, and it's just got this funnel of light at the end of it. Loving the light this time of year. 550 shutter speed, 4.5, f4.5, and ISO 160. Right, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. If you could send in your picture, I'd really appreciate that. Send it to stories@photowalk.show. Let's see where you are as we're all walking our photo walks together. So to the first part of my chat with this week's guest. One thing I didn't mention at the head of the show is that Ian was introduced to me by one of our extra milers, one of our wonderful community of extra milers called Chris Hughes, who said, Neil, would it be possible to get Ian Randall to talk about his progression to become a professional photographer from working in the fire service and his outlook after a cancer diagnosis? And the story, Chris, is obviously, as you're now appreciating, a resounding yes. It's quite the story, I think. We do tell stories of much resilience on this show from photographers, some very well known, and some who emerge from the quiet or the shadows to become real giants in any otherwise different sense. So those tales, those narratives, These stories of resilience are contextually really quite wide on this programme. It's only a couple of weeks ago, actually, that on the Extra Mile, Stephen DuPont talked of a suicide bomber detonating his vest but 5 metres from where he, Stephen, as a photojournalist working in Afghanistan, was sat in a police truck. I was, in all honesty, beside myself with admiration and incredulity for what happened next in his story. It was just an incredibly honest story that he told. Resilience then comes in all manner of circumstance and happenstance, but I'm absolutely proud as Punch to being able to facilitate Ian being able to tell his story on this show. And there's something that comes from this story today that I was not expecting. You see, I knew of the story from the research article that Chris had sent me and I'd read, but I didn't know one particular part of the story that I think proves just how important a simple portrait might be. Here is part 1 of 2 parts today. Ian Randall is my guest on this Photo Walk show. I was forwarded an article written by Susie Kearley, who's a writer and photographer, and she described meeting you, Ian, at the start of both your respective freelance careers. You were, as she described, recovering from cancer treatment and suffering from brain fog in many ways, though it did not thwart your determination to set out on a new photographic journey, in a new photographic world, which we're going to come to. But rewinding the clock, the story clock, what were you doing prior to your diagnosis?
I was 18 years into a career as a fire officer. Very long hours, long shifts, and I had 2 young boys as well at the time. I'd been recently divorced. So, yeah, life was working shifts, seeing the kids, taking one to nursery, one to school, backwards and forwards. And, rarely a chance to have any time off to do anything else but work and look after them. So, life was good. It was a very enjoyable job, although the early mornings and the late nights used to be a bit of a pain at times. But yeah, it was a good career. I really enjoyed it. Good group of friends, colleagues, mates, and it all suddenly came crashing down when I was diagnosed.
What do you remember of the day of the diagnosis?
I remember the pain and discomfort leading up to it. I had a pain in my shoulder blade that sort of came and went over a couple of months. I'd seen a GP and they said, "Oh, you've probably been in the gym and you tweaked something," and then give me a few painkillers, and came back a little bit worse, and I just took some more painkillers. And then after maybe 2 months, 2 and a bit months, I couldn't take a deep breath in. As I thought, and then I started to feel very unwell, as in, I would say worse than man flu, because everyone thought I had man flu to start with.
No.
But I got seriously ill. They thought it may be pneumonia to start with. But I knew for several weeks that I had a form of cancer. Following an x-ray, I was sent to the local hospital at Wickham. Literally got called into a room by a doctor, and there was 2 Macmillan nurses there. He sat me down and said, "You've got a tumour what appears to be in your lung." And I was like, "Tumour? What do you mean tumour? That's like cancer." Or he said, "Yeah, you've got possibly lung cancer." I went into like you see in the films when somebody's in shock and you just see their mouth moving and you hear all these sort of mumbled blah, blah, blah. I didn't take in what he said. I just remember staring at him and seeing his mouth move and thinking, at the time, my mum and stepdad were away on holiday, and I just thought, how am I going to tell them? One of the nurses took me to one side afterwards and said that she thought the x-ray showed a lump in my rib, which meant it would be bone cancer. She said, "It's sarcoma." I said, "Oh, does that mean it's not cancer?" And she said, "Oh no," she said, "it's quite a rare and aggressive form of cancer. It could have been osteosarcoma, but it turned out to be Ewing, so it's also treated slightly differently." And I remember 4 days before Christmas of December 2010, Professor Hassan at Oxford rang me to introduce himself, and he said, "Right, this is what we're going to do. You're going to have 6 cycles of chemotherapy. Each cycle is going to be 5 days. and then we're going to take out half your rib cage. We're going to remove part of the lung, and then after that, we'll give you a load more chemo and maybe radiotherapy at the end. So he said, after about 12 months or so, you'll be back to normal. And I was like, oh, great. It's okay. I was like, it's a bit of a challenge, but
I'd say.
He did say that with Ewing sarcoma being generally a teenage cancer, Prof. Hassan said that as I was coming up to 40, the treatment will be a lot more brutal on me, and you will be in hospital a lot with problems with your bloods, transfusions, platelet transfusions, just general ill health. So he said, just prepare yourself for that. 29th of December, I arrived at hospital for my first round of chemo. They were putting my PICC line in, which took a few hours, and I just thought, I'm here and I've got no choice. I was quite up for the fight because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I'd handle it. But after 5 and a bit days of solid intensive chemo over 4 different chemo drugs, I said to my parents that I can't do it. I felt so absolutely incredibly ill. And little did I know that was just the start of it. And it got progressively worse with each cycle. I had around 2 weeks and a couple of days from one chemo cycle finishing to the next one starting. And in that time, I was in hospital at least twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times. I had dehydration. I had all sorts, pretty much every side effect that you may read about any type of chemo I had. It was just all sorts of things that are far too personal to broadcast. And it just got worse and worse and worse. My nurse specialist, who's a good friend of mine now, Pip Large, I said to her after the 3rd cycle that I said to her, I'm really sorry, I can't do this. So I remember very clearly sitting on the end of my bed, and I had a school photo of my 2 boys who were 5 and 7 at the time. And she pointed at their picture and she said, you will, because you're doing it for them. And after that, I was so ill within hours of the chemo starting for each cycle. I just remember laying on one side, just staring at that photo. And, sometimes I may have passed out. I really couldn't say because I was that ill. But their picture got me through, I think.
That's an incredible story. That is something like a school photograph that we often don't appreciate quite how special even the most simple photographs like they are. And that was your strength, wasn't it? Literally, which is such an overused word, but it was literally your strength.
Yeah, that's, I couldn't pick a phone up. There wasn't smartphones and things back then. Right. I couldn't pick a phone up. I didn't have the energy to reply to text or make a call. So I always had, when I went into the ward or a room, had my bedside table set up so I could lay on my side on the right because my PICC line was on the left. Right. And I'd always have that picture. I used to have it in my book when I wasn't in hospital, and then when I went in, it went on the side, and I could just lay there and stare at it. I didn't have to talk. I didn't have to do anything. And that was many times I woke up feeling incredibly ill and sick, and I just lay there. It gave me some comfort, actually. So I was doing it for them to see. I just wanted their cheeky little faces, it was in my mind. Yeah.
You still have that photograph, clearly, don't you?
I have it still by my bed to this day. Yeah.
Still by the bed to this day. That's amazing. Now, you did recover. You went from, I was going to say strength to strength, but as we'll find out in the conversation, there are days when you don't feel quite so strong. Where does the photography pick up in this story then? Because I know that photography, there is something to do with your colleagues in the fire service and photography, isn't there?
Yes, that's right. One of my mates at work used to be the incident photographer for the fire brigade.
Right.
And I'd always been interested in photography. I always had a camera. I take photos of the kids and things like that. It's always something I've done since I was young. So he said to me one day, if you pick yourself up a cheap little Canon camera, I'll teach you a bit of Photoshop and you can use my lenses. Mm-hmm. Just sort of give me something to do, really. And I went on a course where I met Susie, and that went through sort of different genres of photography, and I just really liked it, and it just went from there, really. Originally, what I needed something to do with my time because I couldn't go back to work, and probably 18 months, maybe 2 years after my treatment finished, I still wasn't very well. So for me to go on this course was a few hours out and gave you a little bit of homework and things to do and look up, and and it just triggered my mind because I just needed to slowly get my brain ticking over again.
Do you think that, I know that Susie talked about the brain fog of treatment, and that's when she met you, and that was something that she'd noticed. Do you think the sort of the mental side of picking up that camera and having something to study for, to learn about? Do you think that helped as well? Was that mental agility in some respects restored through having to learn and wanting to learn and being passionate about something?
Yeah, definitely. When I came out of hospital and I was at home, I couldn't read a book. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't watch a film or anything on television.
Right.
Brain fog is, or chemo brain, or whatever people call it. It's not just you go into a daze, or your mind drifts off, you daydream. It's exhausting, and you cannot think straight. You can't concentrate on anything, and it is the most awful thing. I was told by the hospital to try. I started to do a couple of little games on an iPad just to try and trigger my brain, just silly little kids games, really. Solitaire, things like that, just to slowly build my brain up like it was a muscle. And I get brain fog still, and I always will. And it's really is bloody horrible at times because I don't have energy. I said to you earlier, it's, my 100% is probably 20% of what other people have. So I've got to really carefully consider what I'm doing work-wise with around enough rest. But mentally, it's draining. I've had a few times now where I've had a lot of counselling. I'm currently undergoing counselling now because I can't get my head around not so much what I've been through, but because I do a lot of photography for Sarcoma UK charity now, I've met a lot of people who have died or they've had loved ones die. And for me, I cannot get past why I got through it so far and others haven't. Some people say it's survivor guilt and things like that. But for me, it's, life is not fair, but why me? Why me was a thing I said a million times when I was diagnosed, and I still say it today.
You mentioned there sarcoma and working with Sarcoma as the charity. I think that was extraordinary that the first thing that you thought to do with your photography was actually for the Sarcoma charity. Are you now their official photographer?
Yeah, pretty much. If they've ever got an event on they need photos for, they always email us and see if I'm available. And I will change. For me, that'll be my number one priority for photos. I love doing it. They're at Downing Street, and the marathon was several weeks ago. And
London one, yeah.
And when I first did the marathon photos for them, I think there was 8 runners. Now there was 130 this year. And again, it's probably as exhausting as what for me as the people running the marathon. But it's a magical day. It's heartbreaking, emotional, but it's just one of the best days of the year because it means so much.
14 years lie between 2010 and now 2024, when everything has changed for you. Your Sarcoma charity is, we'll say, official photographer now. You saw a real sort of see a need, fill a need in that particular journey for them, which was great. But then you started photographing sport, and that another passion comes in now because you're a QPR fan for your sins, as they say.
I am. Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a bit fond of QPR because I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure how it will affect our friendship in the future, but I'm an Arsenal fan personally. So QPR now, it's a massive football club. And you're a photographer at QPR. You're the official photographer for QPR. How did that? That's an incredible story. How did all that come about?
Yeah, well, I was after QPR won the playoff final May in 2014.
Yeah,
and the day after we won, they had a parade at the stadium, and there was also that year the women's team had won promotion to what I think was then the top flight. Women's football's changed incredibly in 10 years. And I remember thinking, I didn't know they had a women's team. And I was in a way, running out of things to photograph. I kept trying to do landscapes, and because of my energy levels and health and, lack of money, I couldn't really go anywhere and do stuff. And then saw a tweet from QPR Women that went out sort of at the start of the next season to say if anybody was interested to come down to take a few photos. And I was like, oh, that'd be good. Yeah. I'm sure I could do that. I'll give that a go. So they welcomed me down. They had a photographer there already who was there sometimes, there not. And I couldn't believe how hard it was.
Had you shot any football prior to then?
No, none at all. Right. None at all, not a thing. And I just thought, well, it's okay. I can remember Googling sort of shutter speeds and, various settings, and I'd really had a bog standard camera, which didn't help me, and a cheap lens that at the time I thought was like, I'll never need another lens because this is amazing. But when I look back at those photos now, they're pretty awful. Yeah, they started to use some on social media, and it was really good. And I sort of kept going, and there were a couple of reasons why I wanted to do football. One was when I played football, I've got somewhere in the loft one photo of me playing football.
Right.
And I thought, well, I've got time on my hands now. The second reason was to give me something to do and to learn. And I wanted to try and get my 10,000 hours in and, be really good. Yeah. And it give people, the players, photos and memories as they grow up or get to my age and look back and go, they can tell their children that I did, that I used to play football. Yeah. So it took off from there. I did that I'm still doing the women's football now. Their season's just finished.
I've seen it on your Instagram, yeah. So you're still
thank you, yeah. So that kind of led to the media team at QPR a couple of years later saying, do you fancy coming to do the under-21s at the training ground for a game there? And I'd be like, oh my word, that's like amazing, I can't believe it. And then it was sort of 4 or 5 years just before lockdown. They were like, do you want to come to do the first team training? And I was like, oh God, that's just a dream. It's quite hard to take the photos, but you're just surrounded by the entire squad. Yeah. And over time, they got to know me a little bit, and they all followed my Instagram and asked for pictures and things. And it just took off from there. And I started doing the under-18s, the under-21s, and then I started doing stuff for an agency at the home games. But when the players started using my pictures or contacting me to use the pictures, it was just a dream come true for anyone, I think, that supported a club since they were 5, 6, 7 years old. But having sort of almost a second career that I didn't think I'd ever, I didn't think I'd survive, let alone be able to do something that was so close to my heart, football and photography with QPR as well. It's a bit surreal sometimes.
It's an incredible story. And we'll chat more shortly for part 2, where we learn a little more about Ian's family and his 2 boys who've been so important in this process, and about the day-to-day of being a sports photographer, which for Ian brings about its own challenges.
On the way back to the car, I can literally feel my energy just, sapping away. I get in the car, I put in the sat nav, so I can find the quickest way home. And by the time I get in, I can barely lift my case to get in.
Ian Randall returns for part 2. I asked you over the last week for your photography and walking poems for the summer of 24, and thank you for those who've been sending them in. Here's one called Sanctuary. In the lens, a sanctuary found, where shadows dance and silence sounds. A moment seized, a soul laid bare in frames of light, my burdens wear. Through the viewfinder's steady gaze, the mind finds solace in this maze. A click, a pause, a breath released. Photography is my mental feast. The first of our walking poems, and this one from Brian Kelleher. So thank you for responding to the message out of Instagram. This particular one that we had during the week, and it's one of our new features for the summer. Although, like a dog is not just for Christmas, as the television adverts used to starkly remind us each year, a poem knows no seasonal bounds. So if you do have a poem, an ode, a villanelle, or perhaps haiku, something like that, that embraces your love of walking or photography or both, then send to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. And hopefully, maybe I'll be reading your one out next week. just get a picture of this. I've photographed it before, but the light falls on things in different ways, doesn't it? X100V is what I'm using today, is my sketchbook image maker out on my photo walk. 950 shutter, f4.5, ISO 160. It's there we go. It's a winding bridge that just takes you across a marshy piece of the walk. Barnes started by not using the bridge, and now he looks like he's wearing boots with his... No, don't scratch yourself, you'll get mud all over yourself. It's very itchy at the moment. It's the change of seasons, apparently. That's what the vet said. Change of seasons. Might be a bit more itchy. If you'd like to send in your poem, or indeed photographs from your photo walks, stories from the places you travel, it doesn't all have to have photographs. Some of the poems, I would imagine, might not. Other ones may well. Send them to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. When you're sending pictures in, if you can send them 2,500 pixels wide, that's not the longest side, wide, that would be fantastic. If you can't do that, don't worry. I'll do the heavy lifting for you. Now, we have 2 adventures in the next calendar year. We're going to India in 2025, early part of the year. And for those, I think it's 14 people who've registered their interest. We did it as a register interest thing, much like we did Africa last time. And you've been patient, so very patient. We've been working hard behind the scenes, and it is a we, in this case, to make a photo adventure that will really add to the experience and portfolio of your life, photographically and personally. You know who you are, and I will be in touch soon. I think we can only take 8 to 10 people max on this particular trip. But also, looking ahead in the year now, as you know, we have a second week of the Scottish retreat, where we travel again to Inverness, staying on the famous Black Isle, within reach of the most beautiful and historic landscapes and towns and cities. It's the 5th photographic retreat that we've done or will be doing, and I think it celebrates the feeling our podcast brings to this community. It's an opportunity to escape the noise and spend time with like-minded photographers. At no point will you ever have to explain to somebody, can we stop? I need to make a photograph. No, keep going, come on. We need to... No, you won't need to do that at all. We'll be embracing new creative challenges. For some it's new, for others who are practiced in darkroom skills, it's an equal amount of fun. It really is. Creative writing, learning how to make sound a part of your stills photography. Barnes has just run off. I've no idea where he is. This way, come on. And of course we'll be eating with each other, laughing with each other, walking with each other. It's a wonderful time that we spend in Scotland. I'm so looking forward to it. We are down to one single place. And I promise you, this week, this adventure in Scotland, I'm sure, will change the way you think about your creative life. I'm so looking forward to welcoming our wonderful community of walkers to Scotland. I really am. It's the photo walk. Me with my camera, you with yours. Walking shoes on, dog with me. Barnes, you okay? Pups? Yeah? Good? Absolutely filthy. He couldn't be more filthy if he tried. At least he didn't see the rabbit that I just spied. Oh, that rhymes. We're back to poetry. Just to my left. Ooh, that was a close shave. Here's a letter from Gert Jan Cole, and it's kind of connected with Scotland. For starters, anyway, and then moves on to other stuff reasonably briskly. Good morning, Neil. Hope you're doing marvellously well, decompressing from that lovely retreat in Scotland land. So, you've worked out this was sent in a little while ago. Really enjoy the atmosphere in the darkroom. Yeah, I really enjoy recording those episodes in Scotland. I really do. They are fun. And the darkroom stuff, particularly, I can't see what I'm doing. I have to wrap the recorder up so that no lights are emitting from it. Otherwise we get light pollution. It brought back memories of the days I still had my own darkroom, says Gert, and I used to marvel at the tones and details of the images as they appeared in the developer bath. Well, we did too. These days I still shoot film, but the darkroom has been replaced by a simple changing bag that allows me to sit in our well-lit kitchen at the well-lit kitchen table to load the film on the reel and put it in the development tank. Instead of juggling bottles of developer and stop bath and fixer, I use a single solution Cinestil monobath that first develops the film, then somehow stops that process and automagically turns into a fixer. And I don't even need to wave a wand or utter a spell. All I have to do is pour the solution into the tank, follow the agitation instructions, and yes, there's an app for that. Pour the liquid back into the bottle for future use once it's done and rinse the film. After the negatives are completely dry, I scan them, ingest the files in my normal digital workflow, and boom, Bob's your uncle and Fanny's your aunt, as you oddly say in the UK. Yeah, I don't know where that comes from. There's one to look up. If you like to shoot film but don't have a darkroom, this is an easy and affordable path. But I'm writing to tell you about a different path, one I was walking on during a short break last weekend. We planned to visit relatives in the middle of a nature reserve in the Netherlands land. Netherlands land, yes. And since sometimes there's too many lands, and since we suddenly found ourselves in a heat wave in the middle of September, we decided to bring our tent trailer with us and camp out for a few days. Whenever I'm on holiday, I start the day with an early photo walk to shoot landscapes and macros. Pups has found, what have you found here? That looks like it's like a small emergency lead. That's quite useful, actually. Should we leave it here, Pups? We probably should, shouldn't we? Hang on, I'm reading Gert's letter. While quietly meandering towards the sunrise over a trail across the heather fields, I was overtaken by a boy with red cheeks on a folding bicycle, standing on his pedals and with a tripod strapped on his back. I immediately suspected there'd be something special to photograph up ahead, so I stepped it up a bit. Then another photographer came walking towards me. It's like a brace from the opposite direction. And when we were passing each other, I asked him whether he'd seen anything special today, as you do. He was beaming with joy, and he said, "Sure, there's a pack of 5 wolves up there. My batteries are empty, I have to go home." But he kindly gave me directions where to find the pack, and we went our separate ways, mine now with a clear goal. I followed his directions across a field through dense forest, and sure enough, there they were, beautiful creatures, not seen in our country for over a century, but slowly returning. First, the proverbial lone wolf that crossed the border from Germany in 2018, leading up to approximately 35 animals now living in 8 packs, scattered across the country, and some 9 lone wolves roaming the land looking for a partner. Seeing a wolf, Neil, through your lens is quite a thrill. I'm sure it is. The pictures I've sent include a shot of the alpha briefly standing up to scan the horizon. It's a crop of an image shot with a 400mm mirror telly, which on my Micro Four Thirds camera produces an image with a field of view comparable to that of an 800mm lens on full frame. Based on the GPS reading, the really shy and vigilant animal was still 350 metres away. You could barely see it with the naked eye. I'll attach some landscapes and macros of that trip too, just to convince you that the Netherlands land is definitely worth a visit. I'm not so sure, Gert. You've just told me to expect a pack of wolves waiting for me at the arrivals gate. But in all seriousness, cracking pictures, which will be on the show page today. Those macros, by the way, spot on. I do keep promising to do a show on the magical micros, don't I? Or macros. We'll certainly get around to it. Right, the assignment this month. a couple more weeks to get your entries in for this. It's one set by Simon Blakesley.
The photo walk assignment.
As an aviation photographer, I've chosen the word flight for the assignment.
I like it.
I think that humans have always gazed skyward, captivated by flight. Your image could portray the role of flight, how it plays out in daily life. It might show the interplay between airplanes and wind and weather, or even the excitement generated by a flight to your favorite vacation destination. But I don't want people to be limited just by aircraft. So capturing birds or even fish that fly, or perhaps animals that take to the air. I think like a fox jumping up into the air and then descending down upon a vole to get its dinner. But I think there's another way that we can interpret flight too, and it's in more of an active sense. It could refer perhaps to that physiological human response to something frightening. The ability, for example, to take flight, getting away from something quickly. So I don't want to put any hard limits on this around aviation. So long as your image and your short write-up clearly transmits the specialness or relevance of flight, please feel free to explore and push the envelope.
I like the envelope because that's a very aviation word, isn't it, really?
Indeed.
I was thinking, Simon, I think this is a cracking idea, by the way, really I do. Flight can be so many things, as you've rightly pointed out. Rightly, right, brothers, rightly. See what I did there? But I was walking Barney earlier on, and we were walking in it was the woodland part of this walk, and coming down out of a tree was a leaf. And it was just circling. It wasn't a sycamore, but it was just circling. That's a good example of flight, isn't it?
Yes, and I think there's another one, using it as a verb to flight something. It could be a shuttlecock. It could be a football, for example.
Yes.
I don't think that's necessarily an expression we use in Canada, but it's certainly one I recognize from my English roots. So when I was thinking about this, I thought there's also that too. So perhaps that gives space for people who'd like to bring in perhaps a sports tack to their photo and their submission.
So we've got the word. The word for the assignment for the next month is simply
flight.
Good luck with the assignment. Send your entries in to stories@photowalk.show, stories@photowalk.show. If you can send them in 2,500 pixels wide, that would be really handy. If you don't know how to resize or optimize your images for the web page, don't worry. Send it in, and I'll do the heavy lifting for you. Now, I've noticed here and there more than one image coming in. This month, I'll let that fly. Excuse the pun. But if you can stick to one image for the assignments, that's great. It's just, much easier for my small brain to work out when it comes to thinking, all right, okay, which one am I going for this month's flask winner? I know sometimes we do ask for more than one image, and that's fine. But if you could just send one for next month onwards, that's great. Unless, of course, otherwise asked. What else have we got to do? Oh, yes, at the end of the show today, right at the end, teasing you, right at the end, I think I mentioned this already. I'm sure I did. My studio self, I'm sure, mentioned it. I'm going to be changing up slightly what we do at the end of the month. It'll still be a photo walk, of course, but it's slightly different in terms of the guests. But I'll tell you right at the end of the show, after the play-out song today. I'd like to return, though, to our guest today, our newfound friend, Ian Randall. In this second part, we learn about more of the day-to-day, really, of Ian's life behind a lens now, and how he's learned to respect and listen to his body. And what I think, it is a demanding amphitheatre of photography. On a match day, I know you took your brother, because I think your brother thought you just sat around and snapped a few images of the match. And I know from talking to sports photographers that couldn't be further from the truth, could it? But what's a typical day for you?
Once I'm there, adrenaline kicks in. I usually get to the ground a couple of hours before kick-off, do sort of shots of the stadium, around the stadium, sort of fans arriving, etc. Sometimes it gets used, sometimes it doesn't. You sort of get your position and get everything set up, ready to go. I like to get a sort of few photos done and sent off, so it gives me a bit, or almost like a confidence thing that I'm ready to go. So you're wiring, as it used to be called. Not sure if it's called that anymore. So you're wiring as you go along, yeah? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's sort of, so if there's a goal, for example, or a celebration, and you're lucky enough to get it, then sort of card out on the laptop, straighten it, resize it.
At the pitch side, as it's going on. God, you want to hope they don't score in the next 5 minutes then?
Well, that's always the problem. I know certainly one of the development side about a month ago, I think they were 6-0 up at half time, and I only got two of the goals because I had my head in the laptop.
Yeah.
You don't actually see the match.
No.
Everyone thinks you sit there and enjoy it, but there's so much you miss. You can't capture everything.
As the official photographer of the club, do you get? Are you able to choose where you want to be?
Pretty much. You're given set positions, so I tend to go at each end by the corner flag, whichever end we're kicking at. So I can hover around the halfway line when they do the coin toss, and then I can hobble my way down to the end. 9 times out of 10, depends how many other photographers are there. But it's good. I always try and kick towards the end that we're attacking. Obviously, that's the goals and celebrations are what everyone's after. So.
And what sort of kit are you? I mean, you mentioned the first lens you used wasn't really up to spec. What are you using now? I would imagine the kit has dramatically changed.
Yeah, hugely. It's been a lot of blood, sweat and tears to save money and beg, borrow and steal. Yeah. So I shoot with a Canon 1DX Mark III and a 1DX Mark II camera body.
Nice.
On my 3, I've got the 70 to 200 2.8, sort of covers me around any goals around the goal mouth area. And then on my Mark II body, I've got my fixed 400mm 2.8. So that's really good for just inside the halfway line. And, obviously the goalkeeper, you can't leave the goalkeeper out for us. I'm always 9 times out of 10, I'm at the other end for him. So it's hard to get sharp shots. You've always got players crossing you, but I use that for that with a lot of cropping.
And then at the end of the match, are you on the pitch with a slightly shorter focal length to get reportage shots?
Yep, I generally use my 70 to 200, but I have my 24-105. I have that usually on a third body if I've got one available, just so that if they come running straight into the corner where I am, I can quickly change and get full frame on, the whole player rather than just heads. But it's easier said than done when it's the team you support and they all come running up to you. And I've had them treading on my toes before, and especially with the youngsters, the 18s, and they get carried away, and I'm always going like, stand back, because it's can't get them all in the frame, and they're always after the photos. So
at the end of a match, what does it take out on you?
Usually I'm sort of there probably 3/4 an hour afterwards, sending off all the last images, and having a quick scroll through, and then sort of pack up. And on the way back to the car, I can literally feel my energy just sapping away. I get in the car, I put in the sat nav, so I can find the quickest way home, and by the time I get in, I can barely lift my case to get in. My wife always says, text me when you're on the way and I'll run you a bath, and I get home and sometimes I can barely get up the stairs. Obviously, it depends if we win or not, because if we win, then I get home, the laptop comes back out, because I always send players photos at the end of the game.
Oh, they're using them on their Instagrams and stuff.
Some, some fantastic. Do, which is always nice.
Yeah.
If we lose, then nobody wants to know, so I know that I've got a quiet evening and a quiet next day.
Shut the laptop and move on.
It's like, right, okay, next game. Usually, a lot of the time, the men play on a Saturday, the women play on a Sunday. So, it's if we have one, then I usually upload stuff to Flickr and then put the Flickr album onto fan pages on Facebook and Twitter and things.
So much to do. We're at the close of season now, aren't we? But life doesn't stop for football team. I know we always, as fans, think, oh, that's nice. They get 4 or 5 weeks off and doing nothing. It's not quite like that, is it?
No, not at all. I had my last game yesterday for the development side at the stadium at Loftus Road, and I got home and I thought, oh, brilliant, that's me done. And I sent pictures off, but I'm doing a charity golf day photos on Friday. I got a charity football match on Monday. There's all sorts on. And then before you know it, pre-season starts mid to end of June.
Loftus Road and it doesn't matter what country you're in. I think English and Scottish and Welsh. Oh God, we're going to have to go all around the UK now.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to what I would call one of the older grounds, and I did look it up. It's the 1930s where Loftus Road was built, the stadium. There's a certain magic to older football grounds in the UK. I've been to Loftus Road only once, but it is a magical place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
because it's small, it's tight, it's compact.
It's everyone, the away fans when they lose call it the Subbuteo Stadium, but the touchlines are so close to the stands. There's a couple of corners of the ground where all the noise comes from.
Yeah.
The atmosphere there, we had an awful season last year. It was horrendous, and we looked pretty much dead cert for going down. And the players weren't playing, and then Marty Fuentes has come in, and it's almost shocking to see the difference in a good way, because we started playing football and players started performing better, and there was being around the training ground, you can see when players are down and when things are going well. And it was worrying at times, because you thought, if the players can't pick themselves out, how on earth are we going to, survive the drop? And that will be pretty catastrophic, really, for the club in general if we'd gone down
to fall out of the championship. And then you get supporters that started having a go at players, and you think you don't know the ins and outs. Everyone has good days, everyone has bad days, but you've got to try and switch off for that. But the atmosphere there, especially, like, we've sold out home games for pretty much every game this year. Yeah.
Which, even when we was in the Premier League, I don't think we were selling out games every week. The fans weren't booing. The fans were completely with the side. The atmosphere was rocking. And I think some teams were probably thinking, I don't really want to go there. The last home game, we beat Leeds 4-0. To end their automatic promotion chances, in effect, and kept us safe. And that was probably in the top 3 or 4 that I've ever seen at Loftus Road for atmosphere in all my years of going.
Yeah.
The relief, the passion, just, there was people crying, the fans were going mad. And probably since I first started, that was the first time where I thought to myself, don't really know what to do. I want to jump in. I want to jump over into the crowd and be with them, because you get to know a lot of the people that sit behind you, because you're generally in their way a lot of the time. And I just wanted to pile in with them and enjoy it.
Well, it's been truly a privilege to hear your story and the photographic life that's emerged out of this. How are you now, Ian? What's the future? I got married in August last year. Congratulations.
I met my now wife just before lockdown. I was been on my own for a very long time. I didn't really want to go out and socialise. I was never really good at socialising anyway. I was worried all I would talk about is cancer, and I didn't want to be a cancer bore or to show off that I'd survived. So I just generally, financially, I couldn't really go out much, and all my spare time rather than go out, I'd rather see the boys and things. But I'm looking forward to a little bit of a break here and there for this summer, and just trying to regain some energy, because it's been a long season, sitting out in the cold and the wet for what seems like 6 months now. It does, I think, for anyone, it wears you out, but it also wears me out a lot more. So I don't have to really, for the next few weeks, think about, I need to put in a rest day here and try and do nothing because I've got this and I've got that. And then one day I'm out all day, and the next day, I'm feeling very drained emotionally and physically and mentally. But that's what my issue is. I want to do it because I don't want to let anybody down. And I am unwell or not well enough probably to work a lot of the time, but I do it because I don't want to be seen, he's let me down and they let me down. So I do it to a point where my body just goes, right, okay, it's time you've spent 3 or 4 days in bed, because, you just can't do this. And that just then mentally takes me back to treatment or after treatment, when I was so ill I couldn't get out of bed. And I hate not doing things. If I have a day off, I think by the afternoon I'm twiddling my thumbs and pacing up and down, because I have to be active or feel like I'm achieving something.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone to sleep at 39 and I've woken up and I'm now 53. And I'm older, I'm achier, I'm more unwell all the time, no energy, and I just think what's happened. And I, again, trying to process that. So I have to be very, very conscious and very careful of my limitations.
I don't want to sound crass at all, but I tell you what, those two boys in that picture that was by your hospital bedside for that period back in 2010 in particular. Goodness, I mean, they've grown up a bit now. They'd look a bit different in that photograph now, of course, wouldn't they?
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah, they're ginormous now.
Yeah, but I bet they're really proud of their dad.
Yeah. It's a couple of times they've talked about it, and at the time I didn't realise how scary I looked when I was ill and having treatment. It must have been horrific for them. You know, I didn't realise I was just a mess, really. So, but yeah, my big thing was my aim at when I came out of treatment and the treatment was stopped because of various toxicity problems for the chemo. I wanted to get to 50 years old because then my eldest Jamie would have been 18, Jude would be 16, and I set that as my target. I will get to 50. And I've had many scares, many lumps and bumps and scans and things that I'm not sure of. But, touch wood, I've been extremely lucky and nothing's come back. But when Jude, my youngest, turned 18, it was quite surreal because we went out for dinner, but we went to a pub and I said, right, come on then, buy your old man a pint. And he ordered 3 pints, and the barman just looked at him and went, oh, come on, lads, you serious? And to be in a pub with the boys and have a couple of pints was, almost made everything worthwhile. For that moment, I was, nothing else mattered. I didn't care about, nothing was in my mind to affect me. It was just, for that moment, it was almost like the school picture, but in real life. Yeah, it's one of them things that always makes me smile if I'm feeling a bit rubbish and a bit down. I got to see them grow up, and I hope I'm still around when they both finish university and they both get serious girlfriends or plan about marriage and have kids. That's the next step now.
Tell me they're both QPR fans.
No, they're not, unfortunately. Well, I think one of them is secretly. Jude's come with me a few times because he started doing a bit of photography.
Has he? Oh, good.
Yeah. But no, they're West Ham supporters.
Oh, dear.
So, yeah, I've got pictures of them in their QPR shirts as toddlers. Yeah. And that's good enough for me. I always pull that one out if they start going on about West Ham and how massive West Ham are. So,
that'll be one to give to their best men on their wedding days.
Yeah, exactly.
That
makes their eyes roll.
And my thanks to Ian Randall this week for talking with us on the podcast. It was a real privilege to talk with him. If there's a comment you'd like to leave following the programme today, there's a couple of ways you can do it, actually. One is there's many ways, because we have quite a lot of social media platforms that you can comment on. But the two best ways probably are through the comments. On the show page, there's always a comments section. Or you can email into the show, stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. It's strange doing a show twice. It is like we had a dress rehearsal. It's very unusual to have to record so much again. I have in the past, in the years that we've been doing it, not very often had to re-record bits. But I can't remember the last time, but the whole show. Anyway, the show page today will have pictures from the walk part 1, where you didn't hear me, and the walk part 2 today, where you did hear me. At the end of this month, I'll be recording. This isn't the news about the change coming to the last show of the month, by the way. That's in a moment, just after the play-out song. But at the end of this month, I'll be recording a walking show with John Angerson. It's a lot of fun to actually walk with our guests, atop the conversations, the studio conversations I have during the year. If somebody could hurry along, please, and invent that teleporter, then it would be, well, it's a very green way to go and talk with all of my guests around the world. That would be a lot of fun. But in the absence of that invention, just at the moment, it's nice to, when we can, on this programme, get out and walk with guests. Now, John is a documentary, editorial and commercial photographer. He's published in the Times Magazine, Rolling Stone and Der Spiegel. That's about as German as I get. Der Spiegel. I love saying that one. But there's one particular series of pictures I really want to talk with him about that have me poring over his website for a long time. Pictures of ordinary places that have extraordinary stories, such as a particular bathroom picture in room 629 of a hotel called the Grand. Places that don't necessarily warrant a second look until you remember or know the narrative behind them. I think we're on for a fascinating chat. I'm also looking forward to talking to him about the NASA story that he did. No, other listener, he has not gone to space. I'm still waiting, actually, to talk to a photographer who has, or somebody, it might not necessarily be a photographer, but someone who's been to space that's really into their photography. I've tried a couple of people, haven't pulled that one off yet. And, well, that's it for today. If you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little bit further together, then the Extra Mile edition 433 is waiting for you. The Extra Mile is part of our private Patreon channel, supported by our wonderful community, the people we call Extra Milers. There's an extra show which often features our community as stars of that show. Now, I actually have a short part of the original recording I made when I recorded the show on the South Coast. It's the only bit that survived the wind and at one point the rain. And anyway, coincidentally, it's linked to the bathroom in room 629 of the Grand Hotel. How sometimes these things link. And also, Extra Miler Ryan Katsanis joins me. It's actually an archived interview that I made with Ryan that's never appeared on this title. It's a recording I've re-edited and, in many respects, retold. I am absolutely fascinated by urban exploration, or urbex, and Alcatraz, yes, is, I suppose, one of those ultimate urbanesque places that holds a dark and very sinister interest. But what if you were able to gain access to vignettes of it that others couldn't, because you have a relative who spent a little time there?
On this week's Extra Mile.
I don't know how many cells they actually had, but it's a pretty small prison. That was one of the things that I kind of, in my mind, it was much bigger until I was actually standing there. The cells themselves are actually pretty good size, I would say. I also thought that some of those were pretty decrepit looking at this point, very small little sink and a little steel bed and mattress. Then there's the hole, basically solitary confinement. That to me is terrifying. A lot of the prisoners were transferred there because they were behaving poorly in the other prisons they were in. This was sort of a form of punishment, was to send them to this super secure hell.
Ryan Katsanis is my guest on the Extra Mile today. Our PS to the show is to come. But before that, we need a play-out song, just to make some final frames to, or think about what's been said today. And it is from Kason Renshaw, from Utah. He's an indie folk pop artist whose music reflects a blend of influences ranging from Coldplay to James Taylor. There's a sprinkling, I believe, of Art Garfunkel in there as well. Now, this is a love song, but I think it fits the theme of my conversation perfectly with Ian Randall today as well, because there's a hope to it. There's a call to lean on people in times of trouble. It's such a delicious melody, this one. Perfect as the song to make some final frames to today as we walk our last steps together on this edition this week. This song is called If You Had a Long Day.
I didn't want to be without you. I guess I thought you'd read my mind. And is it too late to allow you to see the mess behind these eyes? Oh, I had a long day. You had a long day. You never did a thing to hurt me. In fact, I know you'd never try. So then I wonder if I'm worthy to find a lover of that kind. But I don't mind. I'll let you call and hear you cry if you had a long day. You had a long day. If you had a long day. You had a long day.
That's Case and Renshaw, and if you had a long day, I still plan, by the way, to make that music show one day featuring the music of this podcast. The songs that we've walked together to at the ends of the programs. It's on my list. Honest, it is. Let's make a final sketchbook image. Oh, I do. I know I've said it already today, but I love the light on sunny days when we get a nice bit of sunshine, and it's just flicking through the trees. The cheese. The tree. Have you been on the mushrooms, Neil? No, the trees, not the cheese. I'm thinking of supper tonight. Right. Yeah, I do like it because it's sort of it fires through the trees and then it just lands along the path, and you create these funnels. And what have we got? 400th shutter speed, f4.5, ISO most firmly at 160, and let's make a final sketchbook. There we go. That'll be on the show page today. We had a production meeting. Oh, that sounds grand, Neil. Because, that's what I think the Extra Milers are. I really do. They're part of our production team. A reasonably large production team, granted. But a production team, all the same. And I put a poll up in the Extra Mile community talking about changing the last program in the month slightly, just changing things up a bit, freshening here and there and doing a few things differently. And the idea of the show is that all our regular friends of the show, people like Giles Penfold, you're a regular friend of the show as well. Hang on, this could be a long show if everybody's involved, but you know what I mean. The friends of the show who appear quite regularly, my friends like Giles Penfold and Sean Tucker, Valerie Jardin, Jeffrey Sadoris, Somali of the Trees, and an extra miler, will be a part of our new Friends episode, cue the song, at the end of each month. It's still a photo walk, it still has your letters, though it's going to be a focused episode, sometimes with a theme, and often with what we've learned during the month, particularly from the guests that we've had on the show as well. So a Friends edition, the last Friday in the month. That'll be from June. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an Extra Miler. We'll keep building this wonderful community of kindness together in the photographic and walking world, a safe place to share our thoughts about this thing that we do, photographing and walking. Now, if I can outstretch my hands and ask for a bit of help now, I'd be very grateful if you could. Help, that is. On the show page, there are some handy buttons that help you share the show. They're underneath the player. I know you've probably seen them before, but you might not have clicked them yet. So try those, and you can share the show that way. Please make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast. That way I can let you know when there's a new episode out. There is a new newsletter now. It's been running a few weeks, which has news about forthcoming shows. and pictures that have been sent in that I think are worth focusing on, if you pardon the pun. And you can get to that newsletter through photowalk.show. And if you know somebody who might like to walk with us, you can forward that newsletter on to them. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT, Andrea Gilpin, who's always across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell, who looks after our Facebook members. You'll need a postscript for the show. I wanted to find something about hope, actually. And I've drawn upon somebody whose words have appeared reasonably often of late. Initially, I thought, I'm not sure that Albert Einstein would be somebody that I necessarily lean on for creative quotes, but he seems to be appearing with a bit of regularity. So this is from Albert Einstein, who said, "Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning."
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.